L.A.G, or Latent Automaton Gangrene, is a short story written and performed by David Lawson. We hope you enjoy L.A.G, Part 2. In a way, Fee was glad this was happening to her. She wasn't a masochist, not anymore, thank God. But after 2 weeks of caring for her husband, she decided it was much worse to be the caretaker than the diseased. And with all he had done for her, she knew it was her turn to give back. She wiped her head instinctively, despite knowing that she could not perspire. It must just be one of those habits you pick up from being around those who do, she decided. She looked down at her husband, M. His eyes stared with an intense concern where she had been crying about an hour ago. They had both learned it was better to try and not talk or move. Doing so always led to unintended consequences. Fee remembered a little less than a week ago when she had slipped. It must have tried to leap up to her aid because 30 minutes after the incident, he suddenly leapt up and barged through the wall. He ran about 5 minutes before Fee was able to stop him. In that time, he managed to crash through around 2 buildings and quite nearly throw himself off a several-story overhang. He would certainly have survived. His mechanical body was made of tough stuff. But Fee couldn't imagine the type of damage he might have caused below if she hadn't been able to stop him. Still, she found he wasn't able to keep his eyes from wandering. Fee imagined that M couldn't help but follow her around the room, or at least try to. The debilitating disease, however, ensured that no matter how diligently he attempted to trail her, he would always be about 5 steps behind. Ever since that incident, they agreed he wouldn't move anything other than his eyes, for his safety and everyone else's. So far, M had diligently done as they agreed, but his eyes always wandered. The worst part was when he cried. It was one thing to see someone you loved crying. It was quite another to know that there was nothing you could do to help. It was worse still, knowing those tears came from emotions that had passed hours ago. Any chance at comforting her beloved husband in his moment of need gone before it had even arrived. She bore all of this with the determination only a woman in love could muster. She endured with the quiet strength that over 30 years of love and friendship had built up in her. She supported him as a wife should, or at least how she thought a wife should. All this time later, Fee still found herself doubting her decisions, but for good reason if her track record was any indication. She did her best to push past her guilt and doubt, and simply be the wife M needed right now. She'd quite literally been designed for him, so she knew she could do this. Then again, I was also designed to be a psychopathic killing machine, so maybe appealing to my design isn't the way to go here, she decided with a grimace. Fee leaned down and wiped away M's tears and kissed him on the forehead. Even if his reactions were delayed, she knew he appreciated her tender care. Or at least I hope he does. If what the doctor said is true, then parts of his observation go dark at unexpected times. Whole parts of the day are missing. Sometimes his audio and visual input will be desynced. She had to stop herself from thinking about it until she spiraled. She didn't handle spiraling well. Right now, M couldn't afford to have her going kill crazy. Fee gripped at the rag she had used to wipe away M's tears, a spark of rage threatening to explode into a forest fire within her. The mad killer named weapon, ready to come out even after decades later at her call. If I ever find out who did this, Weapon thought with a jealous fury only a lover in loss could possess. A knock at the door sounded, extinguishing any self-indulgent fantasies of ripping apart the person who had hurt Fee's love. Fee cleared her throat and took a moment to straighten her hair before answering the door. In the entryway stood a very old, very tired-looking Gilroy. "May I come in?" he asked with the same deadpan expression he always sported. Fee hesitated only a moment. "Of course." She ushered him into their home. "You look well." It sounded hollow even to her. He did not look well. Gilroy's skin was now a constant clammy gray. His bright orange hair had dulled to a brown. Everything on him sagged, his eyes most of all. He now looked more like an old hunting dog than the warrior half-breed he'd been in his youth. Even the stubbed horns and overlarge antennae seemed dull and droopy, respectively. Time had not been kind to the half-breed, and everyone knew it. Fee, as an automaton, hadn't aged a day. Gilroy snorted at her comment. "You're good at a lot of things, Weapon. Insincere pleasantries isn't one of them." The way he said it and the look he gave her made her feel as if no time had passed. She felt that to him, she was still the violent killing machine, with enough blood glistening on her hands to drown someone in. "My name isn't Weapon anymore, Councilman Gilroy. It's Fee. It has been for 30 years. I hope you're able to separate the past from the present." The way she spoke was hostile, and they both knew it. Had it not been for him acting as a buffer, Fee realized she and Gilroy would likely have come to harsh words or even blows long ago. M's mental absence had led the way for old wounds to be reopened, and Gilroy wasn't exactly the master of handling delicate emotions. Then again, neither was Fee. Gilroy nodded. Old habits. Speaking of which, you have any fish sticks? I had to skip lunch while working on this situation. And breakfast. And supper. And lunch again. He shrugged apologetically. Fee sighed and pulled out some of his favorite treats. M always kept a few in the freezer just in case Gilroy stopped by. She had to admit that as much as he pushed her buttons, Gilroy cared for M more than anyone else. Well, anyone else but her, of course. Fee was incredibly efficient with her cooking skills, and had the fish sticks heated and on the table for Gilroy in under 30 seconds. Gilroy chomped on the fish sticks gratefully, while Fee tapped her finger on the table with enough strength to make it shake and tilt from the impact. So, Councilman, she couldn't keep the disdain from her voice as she said Councilman. How Gilroy of all people had been assigned to one of the most important governmental positions in the universe, Fee would never understand. If someone had told me 30 years ago that lazy, good-for-nothing Gilroy would be the representative of an entire planet, I'd have... She paused, lamenting at the realization that she likely would have killed them on the spot 30 years ago, and Gilroy would have been the one trying to save them. She hissed at her own inner thoughts as Gilroy looked at her with just a hint of bewilderment shining under those dull, stone-like eyes. Fee didn't deign to answer his implied question, instead opting to continue her own. How does someone as busy as you have time to come and visit just one sick friend, especially in the middle of a crisis like this? Gilroy finished munching on one of the fish sticks and began chewing on the next before answering, his voice droll with weary apathy. If I'm being frank, Fee, I don't. Gilroy the councilman should probably be filling out more paperwork, authorizing quarantine and further study. But you two are like siblings to me. I couldn't stop myself from making the trip down to visit, especially since so many people are missing right now. Gilroy grimaced and took another bite out of his fish sticks, his apathetic manner refusing to betray even a hint of the emotion of which he spoke. Do you even know where he is right now? Fee asked, her face taut in an emotion-filled frown. Gilroy shook his head. We sent out beacons trying to call them back after the Falcon attack ended, but they either cannot or will not respond. Gilroy finished the last of the fish sticks and looked sadly at the empty plate. Fee scoffed at Gilroy. That he showed more emotion over his lack of food than their lives falling apart seemed perfectly in character for him and perfectly annoying to her. Gilroy slowly wiped some crumbs off his face and looked at her with his dead, tired eyes. How those snakes convinced almost an entire planet to not only reject partnership with the satellite, but accept their protection, I'll never know. Gilroy rubbed one of his nubby horns before interlacing his fingers on the table. Maybe we pushed them too fast. Maybe they weren't ready for all of the... everything that the satellite represents. Fee couldn't take this self-flagellating seriously. Gilroy had always been a quitter, but this was too much. Are you kidding me, Gilroy? We gave them medicine, technology, knowledge of the wider universe. We literally ended slavery and reunited the two races on the planet that had been separated since its creation. For Falk's sake, we were a family, you fish-faced buffoon! Fee slammed her hand onto the table a little too hard and sent it catapulting off to the side. Other than leaning back to avoid being hit, Gilroy gave no reaction to her outburst. That was the tipping point, and Fee's anger gave way to tears. Now when we need them most, they're gone. All of them at once. How can people do that, Gilroy? After all we gave them. She moved her clenched fists to her face and wiped them. We saved their world and invited them into ours. Didn't they just... Words had never been her strong suit. She wanted to do something. Anything to fix the mess her world had become. Fee knew in her heart that there was nothing she could do, but she couldn't bear the undeniable fact that one by one, her family was leaving her. The people she trusted and depended on the most were no longer there for her to lean on. She hadn't been designed to handle stress like this. She hadn't been designed to sit by and be the meek, quiet housewife. She had been designed to be a weapon. The thought rose up within her, along with the manic spark of her old self. Gilroy's hand touched Fee's shoulder, snapping her out of her thoughts. She recoiled a bit on instinct, but didn't shrug him off. She couldn't bring herself to look at him, but she quieted her sobbing enough to listen to him. I don't know, he offered in that dry voice that made her want to punch him. What I do know is we can only deal with what's in front of us. She could feel Gilroy make a hand motion, and even with her eyes closed, she knew he was pointing to him. I also know you're not the only one hurting. You've lost some friends. Jenna lost a husband and child. Fee knew he was right. even if she wanted to tear him limb from limb for saying it. Through gritted teeth, she asked him, "And what exactly am I supposed to do about this then, huh?" She finally glared up at him, her eyes burning red with anger. Gilroy, as unfazed as ever, answered smoothly. Killstreak thinks he can modify his interfacing protocols enough to directly communicate with Im's consciousness. "I don't speak dork!" Fee spat back in a response so childish she even surprised herself. That got a single chuckle out of Gilroy before he continued his explanation. "It means he has a way of talking to Im and getting responses." This made Fee sit up and take notice. "But won't he get infected too?" Gilroy shook his head no. "You were offline during the incident and didn't get infected. I have reports saying you're not the only one. On top of that, Killstreak isn't an automaton, so as long as he's careful, there shouldn't be a problem." Fee was torn. She wanted nothing more than to hear from her husband, but she didn't want to be responsible for anyone else's suffering. She also knew that the last time Killstreak had gone out of commission, the entire satellite had been vulnerable to attack. Now that it was already in utter chaos, Fee didn't think the installation could survive losing 1/4 of the AI team that managed the satellite they lived on. Gilroy interrupted her thoughts as if he could read them. He already considered the dangers, but he decided it was worth the risk. He thinks there's a good chance that talking with Im will help speed up the discovery of a cure. And quite frankly, the council agrees. All we're waiting for is your permission. Fee once again clutched her fist, agonizing over her decision. It was mere moments, however, before she knew what the right choice was. "Something is better than nothing," she decided definitively. "He wants my permission? Well, then he has—" "Calm!" Im suddenly screamed and jumped out of his bed towards where Gilroy stood. With just a fraction of a second to react, Fee kicked Gilroy just hard enough to send him stumbling out of the way. Im raced past them and slammed through the thin wall of their apartment. Their 5th-story apartment. "Im, no!" Fee screamed as she leapt out the hole after her husband. She kicked off the building, propelling herself at a speed she prayed was fast enough to catch him. This is going to hurt someone very much, she realized with white-hot fear. I can only pray it's me. She kept her hand outstretched, grasping at the air as the ground raced to meet them. With a mighty crash, Fee and Im landed meteorically into the ground below. And the chase did not stop there.